podcast for AFL staff and athletes. Today I'll be presenting on 7 tips to improve, and not only improve, but make sure you get a record 2K time trial, a personal best this summer. I'm not going to go into the tips that you would have heard before on our previous episodes. They are the big rocks, they are the fundamentals, such thing as consistent training routine, following interval-based training, long runs, and of course your lifestyle, sleep, nutrition, hydration, and the importance of running technique. I've talked about those in great detail in previous episodes. So hopefully these 7 tips are tips that you haven't heard before, but that I believe, particularly for those that have got a sub 7-minute 2K, can really get you to the next level, whether it be 6 minutes 30 or for those that are 6 minutes 30, get closer to that goal of 6-minute 2K time trial. So if you've got any questions, feel free to use the comment section below. If you're if you're watching us off YouTube, if you're watching us on Instagram, hit me up in the comment section of any questions. A couple of you have sent through from our Instagram story that I'll answer in about 5 minutes. But before we get into today's show, a quick announcement. Super excited to bring in a new online masterclass course, and our first one is going to be with Ben Parker, who's the Gold Coast Suns chef and performance dietitian. This is going to be although it's online, it's going to be a highly practical course. I've referred a few athletes to work with Ben, and some of the key things that they talk about is how effective they found for preparing for the combine, or getting them in great shape to have some structure, have some recipes that are easy to follow that they can apply straight to their training routine, and getting in really good habits regarding their food prep, and knowing what ingredients to go for, and be able to really effectively make some really healthy and nutritious meals to give them more energy and get into that ideal body composition that they need to be able to perform at the highest level. So if you're interested, where tickets are already starting to sell out fast, so make sure to click the link in my Instagram bio, or you can just simply Google Ben Parker's online masterclass and our landing page will pop up. Tickets are $50. They're $30 for Academy members. So if you're on our online program, working with one of our coaches, or you're in our Academy membership, you can get a $20 discount. Really looking forward to the show. It's on December the 17th of it's a Sunday at 10 a.m. Australian Standard Time. I'm actually going live with Ben Parker in 30 minutes. So if you want to watch that live and send in your questions to find out more information, feel free to tune in there. But first tip to improve your 2K time trial, know your current capacity and make sure you've got an idea of what your maximal aerobic speed is. And that's really, really important. There's no point following a program if you're just following targets or following the running partner all the time, and your running partners are changing, or you're following a different workout every time. Some days you're just going hard off feel, other days you're going easy because you're feeling not that motivated. We want to take the emotions out of it and have a really clear program that is structured, progressively overloaded, but more importantly, is specific to your capacity. So to work out your maximal aerobic speed, the research shows a minimum of a 6-minute max distance run. It would be the least amount of time to be able to get an idea of what that maximal aerobic speed is, to have an idea of how we can improve your VO2 max. So 6 minutes would be the minimum. You can do anywhere between 6 and 10 minutes to get that same effect, and you want to work out what the average speed is for that you're moving for that test, and that's where we want to work off a percentage. So just think about like when you're doing percentage-based lifting in the gym, for those that have done that before, perhaps on our program or another program. If you can bench press 100 kilos and you're working at 80%, and you might be doing 5 sets of 5 repetitions at 80%, that's 80 kilos for that person. No different for running. Let's say we're running at 110%, and someone's MAS, their maximum aerobic speed, is 5 meters per second. And they've worked that out from their 2K time trial, what was the average speed they were moving at. And they're running at 110% for, let's say, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off. So they'd be running at 5.5 meters per second, times that 5.5 by the seconds that you're moving, so 120, and that will give you a target distance to hit for those 2 minutes on, 1 minute off. Okay, so that's just one example of how you can use MAS. Highly recommend it to have individual running targets. It's something we've been doing on the online program now for the last 2 years, and I'm getting great feedback from the athletes from that program, not only with their 2K time trial, but also for repeat speed day. We do the same thing for sprints as well. We work off a percentage of their max for their sprints. So things should be objective. It takes the emotions out of it, and also will allow us to progressively overload your program. And it also allows us to be in sync with your gym program and your running program. So highly recommend working that out. Number two, particularly for those that have got already quite a fast 2K time trial. So if you listen to this and your 2K time trials between 6 minutes and 7 minutes, repeat speed day is really, really important in your program because you're already moving at a pretty quick pace to get that time. So we want to be working at above your maximal aerobic speed by at least 20%. So you're working at 120% if you're using MAS. I like to work out your anaerobic speed reserve for more repeat speed days, particularly because you may have a really average 2K time trial, but you're super fast. So for those guys, it's really important that we've got an understanding what their max speed is. Otherwise, the repeat speed day that we program, if we just go off their 2K time trial, will be far too easy, and we're not going to get the stimulus to really challenge repeat speed day. So you can work out what's called their anaerobic speed reserve. If you Google that, my blog post will pop up. If you can't find it, just direct message me and I go into more detail about how to find out your anaerobic speed reserve using a flying 20 meter for those that don't have GPS units. But effectively, good rule of thumb, if you have your anaerobic speed reserve, we're working at 100% of your MAS plus 25% of your anaerobic speed reserve for that repeat speed day. So that's tip number two. Tip number three, something that probably gets overlooked a lot, and that's the importance of flexibility and mobility to be able to get in really efficient shapes. Okay, so I've talked about the importance of a running technique in the past. Something that I think gets overlooked is flexibility, so making sure that you are getting some stretching in, and also tissue health. So if you're following an intense program, we want to make sure that you're looking after your ITB, your calves, your feet, quads, adductors, these muscles that are being constantly pushed to adapt need to also make sure that you're working in, you're not just constantly working out all the time. So I would recommend getting a deep tissue massage once a week, doing PNF stretching, particularly partner stretching if you can, to get a deeper stretch. If you can't, then just use some thick resistance bands to be able to get that deeper stretch, particularly important for stretching your hip flexors and your quads, because we know how dominant they are when you're with your running. And then from a tissue health point of view, I'd be getting a little cross ball or a golf ball underneath your feet to look after the arches in your feet, and making sure you're releasing your calves with a foam roller, as well as your adductors. So that's tip number three, improve flexibility and continually look after your tissue health. Good rule of thumb, let's say you went for a 60-minute field session, try and get in somewhere over the next 24 hours before your next run. So 24 to 48 hours between runs, get in 60 minutes of recovery work. So that might be a 20-minute walk, 20-minute stretch, and then a 20-minute foam roll. And that will put you in good stead and keep your body feeling, rather than feeling all gluey and tight, feeling free, so you'll be able to maintain those good running patterns. Tip number four, days where your joints are sore, so that bad pain that I've talked about in the past. So we're not talking about muscle soreness. We're not talking about just feeling body fatigue or feeling low on motivation. We're talking about actually sore, like a sore knee, a sore foot, maybe early onset of shin splints, whatever it might be, and maybe it's an old injury that you've had in the past. We want to make sure we nip that in the butt straight away and don't just push through that, particularly if it's an overload type injury. We want to make sure we want to prevent at all costs, obviously, a stress fracture in the feet or shin splints, because they can be diabolical to your running fitness and obviously pre-season. So when you do get those early signs, the body does tend to let us know before it's a significant injury. I would go straight into your backup options of having some good aerobic swim workouts or bike workouts. And the best rule of thumb would be work 3 to 1. So 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, or 40 seconds on, 10 seconds off, things like that. Maintain, get good exposure of heart rate above 90% for those that have a smartwatch or heart rate strap. You just simply work out 220 minus your age, and then times 0.9 to work out what we want to try and hit there. And that way we're getting a good aerobic stimulus and also you're looking after your body from those by reducing the ground reaction forces that we get from running. So listen to your body, have some backup options, and get that work in from a physiology point of view, cardiovascular point of view. Don't just do nothing on those days, but also you're looking after your joint health, so you'll be able to hopefully deload and go again another day rather than causing into a long-term injury. Tip number 5, probably something that most of you will be doing already, but for some of you that don't, make sure you actually practice the test that your club does. So if you hear that they're changing to a 10-minute run and you've never gone for a 10-minute run before, I would be regularly doing that, perhaps maybe a month out from your actual test with your football club. So practice your pacing, practice from a mental point of view, preparing for that and doing all out max effort. And make sure you're familiar with the test before doing it with your football club. That's something that can be really important because, as we know, yes, it is a test of your aerobic capacity, but it's also a test of your ability to get the most out of yourself, not over compete, get too competitive early and hit a wall, but equally we also don't want to overpace and have too much left at the end where you could have worked a lot harder. So that's where the pacing comes in. So that's number 5. Make sure you practice either if you've just started your program, have an idea now to work out that maximum aerobic speed that I talked about in tip 1, but also maybe practice once a month your 2K time trial. Number 6, mimic your training environment. So we want to think about where you're going to be running that test with football club. Is it going to be a track? Is it going to be on a football oval? And if so, train at least once a week in that environment. So if you know it's going to be on a track and field, then train your aerobic or longer interval day on that day, particularly when max distance efforts pops up, like maybe a 3-minute max distance effort and you've got a target you want to hit. Do it on that exact train. Ideally, try and get some players down so you can mimic competing with each other and running with people around you. Think about your running shoes, your attire, how you hydrate, how you eat leading up to that, and actually don't just start thinking about the event in the moment, but treat it like a test. So you're probably going to be thinking about it the night before, have a bit of a routine down pat and a strategy, just so you're really familiar and comfortable on race day by exposing yourself to that stress. And then last tip number 7, have a target and use the running calculator, which is a link I'll add into the show notes of this podcast. It's fantastic. You've got I'm just looking at it now for those on YouTube. You've got your everywhere from between 5, 10K, half marathon, 800 meters, 1500, all the way through to 2K time trial. You can enter in the distance, then you can enter in the time that you want to hit, minutes and seconds, and then it will give you your split times that you need to hit. So if you're running a 400-meter track, and let's say I'll just enter in someone that wants to hit a 6-minute 35, for 400 meters, they want to be averaging a 1-minute 19 lap time. So that can be really, really important in terms of helping your pacing. So that's 7 tips there to hopefully give you an advantage and hit a new personal best this summer. If any of these tips you've heard before, or if they're for the first time and you want to start implementing these, please let me know via Instagram or TikTok, or you can email me at jack@preparelikeapro.com. I always love to hear how these podcasts are helping the listeners. So let me know if you found those tips helpful, and good luck with your training. Update for this month in terms of live episodes. We've not only just changed the title over the last couple of weeks to the High Performance Podcast for AFL Staff and Athletes, we've also changed the schedule a little bit. So in 2024, I'll be doing a little bit more, basically 2/3 of the weekly content will be hosted by myself, doing educational content for coaches and athletes. And we'll be doing less interviews. So we'll start to strip that back a little bit more AFL specific though. In 2023, I did broaden the horizon a little bit more at rugby, high performance staff and medical staff. We also looked at track and field. So it was a little bit more of a range of different people, experts in the area. This year in 2024, after some reflection, we'll go back to like we did in 2022, more AFL specific, more narrow-minded, and I've got some great guests already penciled in for the rest of 2023, but also in 2024, early on January, February. So we'll be releasing a new episode every Monday. Either that's hosted by myself or an interview-based episode. That used to be on the Wednesdays. I'm now only going to do one monthly update for footballers, but there'll be a lot more valuable content in that monthly compared to the weekly. And then also we'll do a monthly update for coaches, strength and conditioning staff, so a specific topic for those. And then we'll try and get a good mix of football athletes as well as high performance staff, interview based. So for this, for the rest of the month, these are the guests that we're lucky enough to have on. Jackson Dennis, who's the senior strength and conditioning coach at Fremantle Dockers. That'll be on the 9th of November at 3 p.m. Matt Jordan, who's got his own business and is an expert coach, especially neuromuscular training. That's at 10 a.m. on the 23rd of November. On that same day, we've got Shane McCurry, who's leading the space in well-being in the AFL Australian football. He's at Richmond Football Club. So it'll be an interesting podcast to tune in for. They'll be at 2 p.m. On the same day, on the 23rd of November. And then Gareth Sanford, who's an expert when it comes to team-based conditioning and that using MAEST prescription like I talked about, as well as the anaerobic speed reserve. So if that interests you, particularly high performance staff out there that don't want to just be doing the same cookie cutter programming that everyone else is doing, tempo, just running hundreds, 150s, 200s, 300s, and they want a little bit more science to their approach, a bit more of an objective approach. Gareth's really leading the way there. So tune in on that episode 30th of November at 10 a.m. And then Sam Dodge, who's the head strength and power coach, he's been doing a bit of Jonas's work, Jonas Dudu's work, which we had on recently on the podcast, which Jonas mentioned. Sam's been doing great work with the Adelaide Crows as their senior strength and power coach when it comes to acceleration and deceleration, as well as max velocity work and using view motion, the artificial intelligence, to measure progress from a technique point of view. So that will also be on the 30th of November, that interview, and that will be at 4 p.m. So there's a list. Obviously, Academy members, you've got access to the calendar in our membership to be able to see as soon as I book a guest in or I have booked a masterclass in, it goes straight into that calendar. So when you log into the dashboard, you can see all the upcoming guests. But for those listening in the public forum, that's a bit of an update for the rest of the next few weeks or so. As I mentioned at the start of the show, super excited to bring in probably every year. So we'll look at one per quarter to do an online masterclass where we get to dive in a little bit deeper with a guest, an expert on a specific topic. So first, because nutrition is so popular, both with male and female footballers, I thought we'd get Ben on. He was also top rated when we did our Instagram poll with you guys on our Instagram, which practitioner do you think is the best in the AFL? And Ben came in on top. So it's an absolute pleasure to have him on. Super excited to have Ben on as our first podcast. It's going to be a live, so it'll be dynamic. You'll be able to ask questions to Ben, and he's also going to present and provide some practical knowledge for you all. So make sure to lock in your spot. We've got 45 tickets left. It's going to be online December 17th at 10 a.m. So it's a Sunday, so most of your schedules should be free. And as I mentioned as well, Academy members, if you're on our program, you're following it, you're working with one of our coaches, or you're just simply a member, you save $20 by using the coupon that I've emailed to you all. So really excited for that one. Make sure to get your tickets as they are selling out fast. Now, to wrap up the show, I'm just going to answer a couple of questions that you guys sent in. So firstly, with Lachlan Grant, how to build up a 2K time trial fitness. Great question. So typically you're off season, I'd have 2 weeks off running. If you feel like running, of course, go for it, but no structured running program. Then 2 weeks where we're going for 2 runs a week, typically more an aerobic, longer interval, low intensity one, and then more a repeat speed session. No sprinting at this stage, no hard accelerations or agility work, no ball work programmed either. Then we're going to go for 6 weeks. We're doing 3 sessions a week, typically an aerobic run, a threshold one where they're the hardest, the heart rate's up nice and high, and we're working at that above race pace, so your 2K time trial pace or at it. For 2-to-1 ratio or even 3-to-1 ratio. So that's quite a challenging running day. And then we've got more your intensity day where we're building up your sprints, we're building up your change of direction work, football, and you're doing maybe some shuttles on that day. So we're building up that change of direction work as well as your repeat acceleration work. Then as over that 6 week block, you start to sprint twice a week. So we bookend, start at the end of the week, The middle session might become a bit of a lighter day, but you're getting 2 quality sessions, and then you may get back to your training sessions with your club 1 to 2 times a week in that 6 block. Then we'll typically have a 3-week block where the football program, you're doing 3 football sessions at your club, and then an extra hills or fartlek type run session. So for 3 weeks there, we've increased the running loads. You're doing lots of chaos, lots of football, plus some top up running, and you're running 4 times a week with the extra run session on the weekends. And then 2 weeks over Christmas, where you have a bit of a deload, 3 run sessions a week, let the body sort of absorb that block, which is around 10 weeks of work where you've built up your 2K fitness. So hopefully that makes sense. Ideally, you're in 2K peak shape around that January, February phase, and then you can move on from that type of running and focus more on all your running loads for the week being football orientated and gearing up if you're in season where you're focusing your practice matches in March. As of February, we really don't want to be focusing on 2K time trial. You've hit your targets and you're focusing more on football performance at that point. So hopefully that helps your question, Lachlan. Next one was from Sarah Jones. Prevent overload type injuries. I've struggled with in the past groins and shin splints. How can I prevent these while also improve my performance? Great question, Sarah. I would also throw stress fractures in the lower back and the feet. They're quite common as well for your hard workers or those that find it really hard to read their body and listen to their body, like I talked about before with the tips, making sure that if you do have a niggle, particularly if it's in the shins, the feet, we want to make sure we listen to those, or your knees. We want to listen to those straight away and do an off-feet conditioning session and get diagnosed as well to make sure that you're onto that and you're doing everything you can before it turns into a big problem. But some tips to help mitigate these type of overload injuries. Firstly, following a well-designed program. What does that mean? So something that's progressively overload. So like I just talked about before, that schedule, 2 weeks off, so you mentally and physically recover, rejuvenate, and then it just builds up towards some higher end work where you're out working eventually at 4 sessions a week, and then you get a bit of a deload for a couple of weeks. So progressive overload, making sure your running program also works in with your football program, that also works in with your gym program. So someone's got an idea of your body and what works well for you, but also how to layer in the football, the conditioning, and the gym. Obviously, football is number one, but we want to make sure that conditioning and the gym are appropriate to where you are in with your season. So right now is probably a really good time to be getting fit, getting the footballs back out, doing some change direction work, and really getting strong in the gym, lifting heavy weights. But that will change as we get further along from off-season into pre-season. Your focus will change. So making sure the program is AFL specific, like our online strength conditioning program, where you're working with coaches who understand the demands of the game. Making sure, like I said, you've got an understanding of your capacity. Don't just run with the best runner in the team all the time, because that's going to potentially cause you harm because you're not at their capacity. So you'll be constantly pushing. At times, yes, we want to push and work maximally. Other times, we have lower days and really good opportunity to work on your technique, your rhythm, your breathing. So we can't just be going max out every session. So that's where working within your capacity is really, really important, as I talked about earlier. Frequency, I like to keep it anywhere between, as I mentioned, 2 to 4 runs. No way you should be running every day. That's counterproductive and not sustainable for a footballer. Typically, you're going to be heavier than the athletes that tolerate that, like a marathon runner. But also, you've got other stresses on you that, like weight training, increasing your muscle mass, other things like football loads. So it's not just running that your body contact. There's other stresses that your body needs to be able to tolerate and recover from. So 3 to 4 runs, you should be able to get all the results you need with that frequency. And then lastly, the analogy of thinking of our running loads as money in the bank, and that's something you may have heard before. And simply the analogy is, if you're at the start of your off season, you have that 2 weeks off, we're not putting money in the bank. We're just on hold during that phase. Then you're going for 2 weeks where you're doing 2 sessions in the week, and they shouldn't be high intensity max out runs. They should just be getting back into running. So you're putting in some good money in the bank, not big money in the bank, but you're putting in consistent over those 2 weeks, 4 moderate sessions where you're putting in some money in the bank, and you're not taking a lot out by doing max high intensity effort. Then over that 6 weeks, We should be taking a little bit of money out by doing some high intensity days, but there should be 2 sessions, so 2/3 of it, where you're putting money in. So your sessions where you do have a little bit left in the tank at the end of the session. Those sessions are good. You're building up your capacity. And then that 3-week block where we're going 4 sessions a week, you're probably now at 50-50. So 2 sessions a week where they're highly demanding, you've got nothing left, and then 2 sessions where you've got a little bit left each session and you're putting money back in, okay? So if you don't want to go through where you're just constantly taking money out every session, you're going to cause yourself harm eventually at some point, okay? So make sure we've got that ratio right. And that's it, guys. Hopefully there's enough value there and some important tips and tricks to help you. Make sure to stick around on our Instagram in 20 minutes time, where I'll interview Ben Parker and we'll be discussing how our online masterclass is going to help you. If you're listening to the podcast and you're interested to join and you've got any questions, I'm happy to jump on a call and explain. But essentially, Ben, who's from the Gold Coast Suns, is going to teach you everything you need to know to be able to eat like a pro, both with some recipes and templates for you to follow, but also getting in some good habits and some excellent work that he's been doing over the last few years at the Gold Coast Suns. So if you want to gain muscle, Ben's done a lot of work with the younger developing players. If you want to increase your focus, increase your fueling, so you're feeling high energy and you'll be able to train at the highest level, this will be a perfect masterclass for you. It's only $50, so make sure to book your spot as soon as possible. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on the next